The news, the breaking news, of course, is that the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, Fani Willis, can remain on the Trump-Georgia election interference case. But there's a choice that she has to make. So I want to go back to Jessica Levinson, and I apologize, Anne-Marie, if you've already covered this, but
Jessica,
okay.
what were you going to ask? Because maybe Katrina
or Robert, maybe you can answer this, Katrina. So it strikes me that what the judge is saying is that Fani Willis does have to make a choice. She has to remove Mr. Wade from the entire process because even though the judge, and we have to be clear about this, the judge did not find any evidence of impropriety, but there is perhaps an illusion, an appearance of impropriety. So to me and to anybody who's watching this, Katrina, who's not a lawyer, isn't it kind of a slam dunk that she just jettisons him?
Yeah, I was just saying that before you entered, that seems, no problem. But that seems like the absolute clear choice here for Fani Willis to move ahead with the rest of the prosecution team. Nathan Wade can step aside. We have to see whether she needs to replace him before they can move forward or if they can kind of keep moving ahead and find someone to take on this job, although it is a really big job. We had reported previously that she went to 2 other people before Nathan Wade who turned this down because they didn't want the scrutiny involved in a case like this, the types of threats that you received, and to live their life after being on this type of case.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, as part of the decision here, it points that out, that she had offered the job to former Governor Roy Barnes, who declined, that the contract allows for $250 an hour rate, which is apparently quite low for a Metro Atlanta attorney. But also there's a cap on the number of hours you can work a week. So, I mean, this is not the kind of job that you get rich on. And I think that that was sort of part of what both of them were arguing, that, you know, that there's even if there was a mixing of the money, because the suggestion was in kind of this roundabout way, because they had been dating and he was working, the allegation is he was working for her, then the money that he spent on dates was benefiting her, so she was benefiting from the public funds that she was paying him. Really, really sort of roundabout. But, you know, they were sort of arguing, not only was that not the case, this isn't really the kind of job that high-profile lawyers are scrambling to get on because it's not going to make you rich.
Right. And the other question, too, that I have, Katrina, is that the court found that the court was unable to place any stock in the testimony of Terrence Bradley. Remind our viewers who Mr. Bradley is.
Sure, that stood out to me as well. Terrence Bradley was a former business partner of Nathan Wade, and he had also been his attorney in his divorce for a while, and the defense had viewed him as their star witness. He apparently had actually, I believe, tipped them off to the relationship and had previously said that the relationship started before Wade was hired for this trial. Now, on the stand, both Nathan Wade and Fani Willis testified that their relationship started after he'd been hired. And even in the ruling, the judge admits that the timeline of the relationship is still questionable, but he still didn't find it to be enough to create a conflict of interest that would end this case or take Fani Willis off of it completely without removing Nathan Wade, according to his decision.
All right, I think we have Jessica Levinson back. And Jessica, for people that are just joining us, the news is that Fani Willis will be able to remain on the case. Well, actually, the news is that no conflict of interest was found between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade in the election interference case against Donald Trump and a number of other defendants. However, the appearance may be enough. And enough that one of the two, Fani Willis or Nathan Wade, should be leaving this case. And so when we were talking a little bit earlier, Jessica, what I thought to myself as you were sort of explaining this is there's the law, and then this other part seems like the art. You know, like it's the art of now it's beyond sort of black and white, right and wrong, what the evidence proves. It's about, are we going to ensure that people have faith in the system?
Right.
Well, actually, I think that is part of the law. So I had the opportunity to work for a federal judge. I know very little bit about the federal conflict of interest rules. Obviously, here we're talking about Georgia state. But what we can see throughout conflict of interest rules, even for members of the government who aren't in the judiciary, is that there's an acknowledgement in the black letter of the law that appearance matters. that we have to have confidence in those who seek to represent us, and we have to have confidence in those presiding over cases, not just one of the most important criminal cases that, frankly, our nation has ever seen, but in everyday cases. Because if we don't have that confidence, then as Judge McAfee's ruling says, and he cites, I think, to the Federalist Papers, he goes way back to the beginning. He says, if we don't have that confidence, then the weakest branch suffers, meaning this is a branch that depends on our respect. This is a branch that lives and dies and on us thinking that it is legitimate. And what we see throughout this ruling, as we have more time to go through it, is that this really is a condemnation of actions that Fani Willis took. And he's basically saying it's not enough here for an actual conflict of interest, but he thinks under the law, and I would say actually, in my view, this is more than the art. This is still, he thinks he is required to say one of these two people has to go. And one of the lines that jumped out at me is he said, an odor of mendacity remains, meaning we have to do something before this case can proceed. I think that I'm thinking back to James Comey saying, we're not going to press criminal charges against Hillary Clinton, but this was deeply negligent. It still does feel like a strong rebuke from Judge McAfee saying, you shouldn't have done this. And therefore, you need to go or Nathan Wade needs to go.
Yeah, but the other thing that sort of is interesting to me, Jessica and Katrina and Robert, is we did get a statement here, and I don't know if you've read this already, Anne-Marie, but we did get a statement from former President Trump's lawyer, Steve Sadow. This came to us. Did you get to that?
No,
so this comes to us from Olivia Rinaldi, who follows the Trump campaign. And here's what the statement says. I want everybody to hear it. While respecting the court's decision, we believe that the court did not afford appropriate significance to the prosecutorial misconduct of Willis and Wade, including the financial benefits, testifying untruthfully about when their personal relationship began, as well as Willis's extrajudicial MLK quote-unquote church speech, where she played the race card and falsely accused the defendants and their counsel of racism. We will use all legal options available as we continue to fight to end this case, which should have never been bought in the first place, which that last line sounds like somebody we know. And the grievance that they seem to have about everything when it comes to legal cases against them. But, it's interesting to me, Jessica, that they're pointing out that one of the things that they take umbrage to is Fani Willis's MLK speech, which she simply was explaining that as a black woman of color in her position, she would always be consistently attacked, her judgment and her motives constantly under attack. I think if you are a black woman in America watching this, you don't take umbrage to that. You say that's just sort of the norm for a lot of women in this country. And then you add on the layer of being a black woman, and this is sort of oftentimes for many par for the course. But why are they choosing to put that in their statement when it really was not part of what the judge was deciding?
Well, because I think this is part of their strategy, and they have, in fact, called Letitia James, the Black Attorney General in New York, Fani Willis, the Black District Attorney in Fulton County. They have accused them of racism. And so in my mind, this is part of an overall strategy to try and undermine the legitimacy of these charges. I think, again, it's worth noting that nowhere does Judge McAfee, because he shouldn't, and it would be wildly inappropriate, say this case should not have been brought. There's a question about the underlying claims of the case. This is not about Donald Trump's behavior. This is about the behavior of the prosecutor, who we can have a lengthy discussion about the level of scrutiny that she is under. This is an incredibly high-profile case. There's really no way of overemphasizing that. And we do know that people in our society, some people bear a much harder burden of scrutiny than others. But this has nothing to do with what Donald Trump did on the days leading up to January 6th. This is all about ensuring that when the jury looks at what Donald Trump did and failed to do, that they can look at that with clear eyes and not have questions about why this case was brought.